I had always thought the universe was vast, but it wasn't until we arrived at Earth that I truly understood the scale of its mystery. The galaxy was an endless expanse of stars, each one a potential cradle for life. And yet, Earth, this tiny, insignificant speck on the edge of the Milky Way, was the one we had chosen to study. As the last surviving empire, the Jadak Federation had sent us here, drawn by old rumors, long-abandoned files, and whispers in the dark corners of space about the peculiar planet. It had survived the chaos that had ravaged the galaxy, a testament to some secret power it held. We arrived with the usual detachment of an exploratory mission. We would survey the planet, collect data, perhaps take a few specimens, and then leave, just as we had done on countless worlds before. Earth's history was ancient, its cultures a mixture of primitive tribes and advanced technologies, yet it had somehow resisted the tides of galactic domination. Our first scans revealed no extraordinary resources, nothing we hadn't seen before. Still, we were compelled to land. I remember the moment we touched down. The sky was overcast, a dull gray that matched the endless horizon. There was something wrong about the place. It wasn't the weather nor the landscape. It was a feeling, an undercurrent of unease that thrummed through the air. As I stepped out of the shuttle, the cold hit me first. It wasn't the chill of winter, but something deeper, as if the planet itself had been untouched by warmth for longer than it should have been. The grass beneath my boots was a dull shade of green, as if it had forgotten its true color. It was then that we found it, the first sign, hidden beneath the surface, buried deep in the forgotten ruins of an ancient city. The artifacts we uncovered seemed like nothing more than the relics of a dead civilization. But as we dug deeper, we found something that made our hearts stop. A single, weathered note, carefully preserved in a small stone box. At first, we thought it was just another form of ancient communication, perhaps a burial rite or some ceremonial script. The note was simple, written in a language no one could read, but with one distinct feature, a universal symbol etched into the corner. They guard something worse. 4 words, that's all it said. Every member of the expedition stood in stunned silence. Some thought it was a warning from some ancient race, an attempt to discourage any future explorers from finding what lay beneath the surface. Others speculated it was an inscription left by some long-dead conquerors. But none of us could ignore the weight of it, the strange sense that this was more than just a message. Every civilization we came across had left their mark on Earth in some way. Some signs were crude, others more sophisticated, but all contained the same phrase. We could not escape it. It was as if the message was embedded in the very fabric of Earth's history. The problem was that the more we searched, the more we began to question, what was Earth guarding? And why had no one before us ever come back to tell the tale? We couldn't help ourselves. We pressed on. We thought we were invincible, that we, the mighty Jadak, could handle whatever secrets this planet held. But deep down, I began to wonder, were we really the ones in control? Or was it Earth that was in charge, pulling us deeper into its mystery? And if those who came before us had left that message, were they trying to warn us or curse us? We met Thomas on the 5th day of our exploration. It was an accident, really. We were camped near a small village, one of many we had been systematically surveying. We were here to observe, to gather data about Earth's remaining inhabitants, their cultures, their technologies. Our team had spread out, scanning the environment, but I had taken it upon myself to conduct a closer inspection of the town's outskirts. That's when I saw him, Thomas. He didn't appear to be anything special at first glance. A man in his mid-30s wearing tattered clothes that had clearly seen better days, and carrying the kind of tiredness you find in people who've lived through hardships. His eyes were the first thing I noticed, though. Hollow, distant, like they had seen more than they should have. He didn't approach us with curiosity or caution, like most Earthlings did when they saw our advanced suits and technology. He just stood there, watching us with a faint, almost knowing smile, as though he'd been expecting us. I had read that humanity was a species marked by resilience, by the way they adapted, survived, and rebuilt after countless catastrophes. But Thomas didn't seem like someone who had adapted. He seemed broken. There was no fear in him, but neither was there any hope. Just a kind of acceptance, as if he knew something we didn't. When I first spoke to him, he greeted me without hesitation, his voice low and calm. It was the kind of voice you'd expect from someone who had seen their world crumble. He didn't ask who we were, where we came from, or why we were there. He simply said, "I've been waiting for you." For a moment, I thought he might be some sort of survivor from a forgotten faction, someone who had somehow pieced together knowledge about us through the ruins of Earth's history. But when I asked how he knew who we were, he didn't answer directly. Instead, he told me something that I couldn't forget. They might guard something worse. The words were simple, but they were heavy with meaning, almost like a command. His voice faltered slightly when he said it, as though the very act of speaking the words caused him pain. There was no fear in his tone, but there was something deeper, something darker, that made my skin crawl. I tried to get him to elaborate, to ask what he meant, but he only shook his head. "I can't say it," he murmured, his eyes clouding over, as though the mere idea of explaining it would break him. Then, almost as if on instinct, he turned and walked away, vanishing into the haze of the morning fog. We thought little of it at the time, chalking it up to eccentricity, perhaps some side effect of living in the chaos of Earth's fractured civilization. But it wasn't long before we realized that Thomas wasn't the only one who had this odd, almost resigned knowledge of Earth's hidden truth. Over the next few days, we encountered others like him, survivors, wanderers, and recluses, all bearing the same weary look, all speaking in hushed tones about something buried beneath Earth's surface. Some were even more cryptic than Thomas. One woman, her hair graying at the temples, told me, "It's not about what's above, it's what's below that'll get you." We continued our work, more driven than ever to unravel Earth's mysteries, but something had shifted. The warning in Thomas's eyes, his cryptic message, echoed in my thoughts. The deeper we dug into the planet's history, the more I began to wonder if we were not the first to stumble upon this dark truth. Were we truly exploring this planet, or were we being drawn into something far older, far more dangerous than we could ever have imagined? Each warning, each strange encounter, added weight to the feeling that we were walking into a trap. Yet, there was no turning back. We had come too far. I should have listened to them. I should have turned back. But Earth had already begun to get under my skin. And no matter how many warnings we received, it was clear that whatever lay beneath the surface, whatever it was that the dead civilizations had warned about, was something we could not ignore. The deeper we ventured into Earth's forgotten past, the more we encountered the remnants of civilizations long lost to time. At first, we believed we were simply uncovering ancient cities, their histories buried beneath layers of dirt and decay. But as we delved further into the ruins, it became clear that Earth held something far more complex and far more sinister than we had expected. We discovered the first clue in the desert. It was an ancient temple, partially eroded by wind and time, its stones worn smooth but strangely unbroken. The architecture was unlike anything we had seen before. Intricate carvings adorned the walls, their meaning impossible to decipher at first glance. But there was a constant motif that kept appearing, an eye, staring forward, unblinking, watching. We had uncovered similar symbols before, scattered throughout the world in isolated pockets, but never with such frequency, such intensity. Something about this place felt different. As we dug deeper into the ruins, we found a hidden chamber beneath the temple, sealed for millennia. The air was thick with dust, the stone walls chilled as if they had not seen the warmth of sunlight in an eternity. In the center of the chamber stood a pedestal, and upon it a single object, a stone tablet. inscribed with words and symbols in a language that appeared as ancient as the planet itself. We couldn't understand most of it, but there were a few words that stood out. Phrases in the same pattern we had seen before. They guard something. It was the same warning, the same message that had followed us throughout every corner of the planet. We gathered our team around the pedestal, examining the tablet in awe. But this time, something was different. This message didn't just warn us. It seemed to imply something deeper, a sense of urgency, as if whoever had left it behind was trying to prevent something much darker from being unleashed. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being drawn toward something, as though the planet itself was guiding us to this discovery. It was almost as if Earth had been waiting for us to find this hidden truth, or worse, perhaps we weren't the first to stumble upon it. I found myself thinking of Thomas, the man we had encountered days earlier, his strange words still echoing in my mind. As we continued to explore, we encountered more ruins, more signs of civilizations that had risen and fallen, all bearing the same cryptic message. Every city, every structure, every ruin was marked by this warning: they guard something worse. Some civilizations had been more direct in their approach, leaving behind elaborate traps and false entrances to keep intruders away. Others had built their cities in ways that seemed deliberately designed to hide their secrets. But one thing became clear. The further we went, the more desperate the warning became. The signs weren't just scattered anymore. They were built into the very fabric of the structures, embedded in the landscapes, carved into the bones of the planet itself. It felt as though every step we took was leading us closer to a terrifying truth that we weren't meant to understand. Despite the warnings, we pressed on. Each ruin, each artifact, fueled our drive to uncover what lay beneath Earth's surface. But the more we learned, the less certain I became. We were no longer exploring just a planet. We were entangled in something far greater, something older than any civilization in the galaxy. Earth wasn't just a planet. It was a prison, and we were the unwitting visitors. And as we continued to unearth more signs, more cryptic warnings, a terrifying realization took root. Whatever they were guarding, whatever was buried beneath the surface of this world, it was far worse than anything we had ever imagined. We found it in the frozen expanse of the Arctic. It wasn't supposed to be there. We had only come to investigate the region because it was remote, uninhabited, and seemed like an ideal spot to test some of our theories about Earth's historical climate shifts. But beneath the ice, something had been hidden, something far older and far more dangerous than we had ever imagined. At first, it appeared to be just another geological formation, a crack in the ice, a natural cave system perhaps. But as we ventured deeper, something caught our attention. A series of perfectly straight lines etched into the ice. The markings were far too precise to be the work of nature. They were deliberate, purposeful. I felt a chill that wasn't caused by the cold as we followed the lines, our footsteps crunching on the frost-covered ground. The further we went, the more we realized we weren't dealing with a natural phenomenon. The ice itself seemed to be concealing something buried deep beneath the surface, as if the planet itself was trying to keep it hidden. We discovered an entrance, half covered by centuries of ice and snow. It wasn't a cave or a fissure, it was a doorway, shaped from the very rock beneath the ice. The moment we stepped through it, we knew we had crossed into something far beyond anything we had encountered before. The air felt different in that space, thick, almost as if the very atmosphere was charged with energy. The walls of the structure were smooth, impossibly smooth, as though they had been carved by a hand far more advanced than anything we had seen. Strange symbols adorned the walls, glowing faintly in the dim light of our torches, but they were not like anything we had encountered in the other ruins. These markings pulsed with a quiet power, as if alive, and there was an unmistakable sense of awareness in the way they seemed to shift when we moved. At the center of the chamber, there was a structure unlike anything we had seen before. A massive, monolithic gate, pulsating with energy. It stood alone, a doorway carved into the rock, its surface rippling like water, distorting the light around it. It wasn't just a door. It was something more, something alive. We could feel its presence like a pressure on our minds, pushing us, pulling us toward it. I don't know what compelled me to approach it, but as I did, I felt a strange compulsion to reach out. The air around the gate grew colder, and the pressure on my mind intensified. It was as though the gate was calling to me, urging me to open it, to release whatever lay beyond. But there was something in the back of my mind, a nagging doubt, a feeling of dread that had been growing ever since we'd arrived on Earth. I remembered the warnings we had found, the notes in the ruins, the strange cryptic words left behind by long-dead civilizations. They guard something worse. I stepped back, my heart racing, and looked at my team. They were all as mesmerized by the gate as I was. They were drawn to it, their eyes wide with the same curiosity, the same thirst for knowledge. And yet, I felt something deeper, a sense of terror that I could not explain. We were not meant to open this gate. Whatever lay beyond it, whatever had been sealed away for so long, was not something we were meant to see. The others, though, were already preparing to activate the mechanism, if it could even be called that. Their excitement was palpable, but I could see it in their eyes, the same fear, the same curiosity that had driven every other race that had ever found this place. They, too, had heard the warnings, yet they pressed on, unable to resist the pull of whatever was hidden beyond that gate. I couldn't stop them. I knew I wouldn't be able to, but I could not shake the feeling that by opening this door, we were not just uncovering Earth's secrets. We were opening the door to our doom. As I stood there, the last warning echoed in my mind. Earth did not guard something. Earth was something, and we were about to awaken it. We opened the gate. There's no other way to describe it. We didn't just activate a mechanism or unlock a door. We broke something open, something that had been sealed away for millennia. The moment the gate responded, there was a shift in the air, a tremor that reverberated through the ground beneath our feet. The walls seemed to hum with an energy that was foreign, alien even to our advanced sensors. I could hear the others whispering in awe, but there was no excitement in their voices, only reverence. We were standing at the threshold of something ancient, something far beyond our understanding. The gate itself trembled, and then, without warning, the surface rippled, as though the very fabric of reality were bending. A sliver of light appeared in the center, a crack that widened, allowing a glimpse into the darkness beyond. It wasn't a void, but something else. It was like looking into the fabric of existence itself, the boundary between the known and the unknown. The light didn't come from any source we could detect. It was a cold, distant glow, like the reflection of a dying star. The team stood still, transfixed. We couldn't tear our eyes away. The air was thick, suffocating in its weight. I could feel my pulse quickening, but it wasn't just fear. It was something else, something more primal, as though my very instincts were screaming at me to step back, to leave, to run as far as possible from this place. But I couldn't move. No one could. And then, as if in answer to the unspoken question that had been on all our minds since we first laid eyes on the gate, something stepped through. It wasn't a creature, not in the sense that we understood it. It was a presence, an entity that seemed to fill the space around us, its form constantly shifting, as though it had no true shape. It wasn't solid, and yet it was there, inescapable, all-encompassing. It moved with a kind of fluidity that defied the laws of physics. One moment, it was a swirling mass of shadows, and the next, it was a blinding flash of light. It didn't have eyes, or a mouth, or any features we could comprehend. It was simply there. The moment it crossed the threshold, I felt a pressure in my mind. It wasn't physical, but it was real, a force that pressed against my thoughts, twisted them. I saw flashes of images, of distant worlds, of galaxies burning, of civilizations falling into ruin. The universe, in all its beauty and horror, unfolded before me in a single moment, and I understood in an instant that this thing, this presence, was not just an entity. It was something older than time itself, something beyond comprehension, and it had been waiting for us to open the door. I wasn't alone in this realization. I saw the others, my team, my colleagues, reacting the same way. They staggered back, clutching their heads, eyes wide with terror. But even as they struggled to tear themselves away from the entity's presence, they couldn't look away. It was as though we were all trapped in its gaze, unable to escape. And then it spoke, not in words, but in thoughts. The message wasn't audible, but it reverberated in our minds like a sound wave, a low hum that filled the silence around us. You should not have come. I didn't hear it, I felt it. We were not the first to find this place. The warning was clear now, more than any message carved into stone or written on ancient tablets. Every civilization that had ever set foot on Earth had made the same mistake we had. They had opened the gate, they had allowed this thing to step through, and each one of them had paid the price. I could feel the truth, a crushing weight bearing down on my chest. We weren't just explorers or conquerors, we were trespassers. And this thing, whatever it was not something to be understood or controlled. It was something to be feared, something to be contained. Earth was not a planet to be explored. Earth. The entity did not move or speak again. It didn't need to. Its presence was enough. It took only moments for the others to break. Some screamed, others fell to their knees, their minds unraveling in the face of this incomprehensible force. I watched as they crumbled, broken by the weight of knowledge, by the terror of what we had unleashed. Some of them begged for mercy, but there was no mercy to be had. There was no way to undo what we had done. We were the last of the Jadek, and we had just awoken the true guardian of Earth. But we were not its intended prisoners. We were its next victims. The presence lingered, suffocating the air, wrapping around us like a cold, unseen hand. Its message echoed in my mind like a constant hum in the back of my thoughts, unshakable, inevitable. You should not have come. I tried to move, to act, but my body wouldn't respond. Fear, raw and primal, coursed through my veins. It wasn't the fear of an unknown enemy or a dangerous creature. It was something deeper, something that gripped the very core of my being. It was the fear of knowing, the unbearable realization that we had crossed a threshold from which there was no return. The door was opened, and something far older, far more powerful than we could ever understand, had been allowed to step back into the world. I glanced at the others, but their expressions were vacant, their eyes wide, pupils dilated as if their very souls had been touched by something far beyond them. They were frozen in place, some trembling, others mouthing silent pleas that I couldn't hear. Their minds had been torn open, and whatever this presence had shown them, whatever it had revealed, was too much for them to comprehend. One of the engineers, a young woman named Alia, dropped to the ground, her hands gripping her head, her face contorted in agony. She screamed, an unearthly, shrill cry that echoed through the chamber. But it wasn't a scream of physical pain. It was something else, something far more terrifying. It was the sound of a mind shattering, of a person being overwhelmed by the knowledge of the universe's darkest truths. I wanted to help, to reach out to her, but I couldn't. I couldn't move, couldn't think. My mind was filled with images, fragmented visions that danced before my eyes like ghosts. I saw stars collapsing, galaxies being devoured by black holes, and entire civilizations reduced to nothing but dust and echoes. I saw the rise of this presence, how it had come into being, how it had spread across the cosmos, consuming worlds, leaving only ruin in its wake. I saw Earth not as a planet, but as a prison, a containment field designed to trap this entity, to keep it locked away, far from the rest of the universe. This was not a god. It was not a deity or a creature of the old myths. It was something else entirely. An ancient force, a cosmic terror that had existed long before any of us, long before our ancestors had even dreamt of reaching the stars. And Earth had been its jail, its final prison. We weren't just intruders. We were fools who had unknowingly released the very thing that had been sealed away for eons. I tried to make sense of the visions, to understand what had happened, but it was impossible. The entity's influence was all-encompassing, like a wave crashing over my mind, drowning any coherent thoughts. My heart pounded in my chest, and I could feel the pressure building within me, as if the entity itself were pressing down on my very soul, forcing me to understand the full weight of its existence. Then a voice broke through the chaos. It was faint, distant, but I could hear it clearly in my mind. It was Thomas, the man we had met earlier, the one who had warned us. His words were like a lifeline in the darkness. "It's already begun." The words were simple, but they were filled with an awful finality. I didn't need him to explain further. I understood. Whatever this thing was, it was already starting its work. It had been waiting for us to unlock the gate, for us to open the door that had kept it sealed away for so long. I glanced around frantically, looking for any escape, any way to undo the damage we had done. But there was nothing. There was no going back. We had awakened it, and now Earth would be the first to fall. The ground beneath us began to tremble, softly at first, but then with increasing intensity. The walls of the chamber seemed to warp and bend, as though reality itself was beginning to unravel. In the distance, I could hear something deep within the planet, beginning to stir. It wasn't a sound, exactly, but a presence, a shift in the very fabric of the world. The entity had not come alone. The horror of it hit me in a single moment of clarity. The warning had always been there, in the back of our minds, whispered by the remnants of every civilization that had ever touched Earth. They guard something worse. And now, as I watched the others crumble before the force of the entity's power, I realized the truth. Earth was not just guarding a force of nature. Earth was guarding the end of everything. The tremors grew worse. They weren't just physical anymore. The very air around us seemed to bend, to twist, as though reality itself was fracturing under the weight of what we had unleashed. The entity, the presence that we had allowed into our world was not merely content with existing, it was changing things. Its influence rippled outward, distorting the very fabric of space and time, pulling at the edges of existence. I could see it now, the cracks in reality spreading like a spider's web, reaching out from the chamber and beyond, touching everything. I was no longer sure of the ground beneath me, or even of my own thoughts. The presence in the room seemed to grow, to swell with power, its form shifting and undulating like liquid darkness. It wasn't one thing, it was all things, and it was taking everything with it. The walls of the chamber pulsed with its energy, and I could hear whispers, distant voices in the back of my mind. It wasn't speaking in words anymore. It was speaking in knowledge, the knowledge of the entire cosmos, the birth and death of stars, the rise and fall of civilizations, the cycle of creation and destruction. It was overwhelming. My heart raced, but not from fear. I wasn't afraid of the entity. I was afraid of understanding it. The crushing weight of its knowledge threatened to collapse my mind, to bury me under the sheer scope of its existence. I saw in flashes everything that had ever been, everything that could be, every parallel universe, every alternate possibility. And yet, at the same time, I saw the destruction, the emptiness, the annihilation of it all. This thing was not just ancient. It was eternal. It had existed long before Earth, before the universe had even taken shape, and it would endure long after everything we knew had been erased from existence. I tried to move, to find some escape, but the weight of it was too much. The air around me grew thick, heavy with the pressure of its power. My body felt like it was made of stone, immovable, trapped. My mind screamed, desperate for a way out, but there was nothing. The gate had been opened. We had invited this into our world, and now we had no choice but to witness the consequences. In the distance, I heard the others. They were still alive, still fighting in their own ways, but I could see in their eyes that they had already lost. Some were curled up in the corner of the room, their hands over their ears, trying to block out the whispers, the overwhelming knowledge that was being forced into their minds. Others were still standing, their eyes wide, unblinking, as though they were trying to hold on to something, anything, to resist the suffocating grip of this force. But they were all slipping. One by one, they were succumbing to the entity's pull, their wills crumbling under the weight of the truth. It was too much. No one could withstand it. I could feel it myself, a dull ache in my skull, the pressure building, threatening to shatter me. They guard something worse. Thomas's words echoed through my mind once more. He had known, he had understood, perhaps better than any of us, what Earth had been protecting. It wasn't just this entity, it was the after, the inevitable aftermath of whatever came next. Earth had been the last line of defense, but it wasn't enough. We had opened the door, and now it was too late. I stumbled backward, my legs giving way beneath me. I collapsed to the cold stone floor, gasping for breath. But it didn't matter. The air had grown thin, and the world was fading around me. Through the cracks in reality, I saw flashes of something else, something even darker, even more incomprehensible than the entity itself. I didn't know what it was, but I knew it was coming, and we had no way to stop it.